tiny cameras, compact cameras, point and shoot cameras. They're all different, but kind of the same. We've all seen the hype, the claims that these types of cameras will make you a better photographer. But will they? These are small cameras that are easy to carry but can pack a punch and potentially elevate your shooting. But is it the camera doing that, or the simple action of taking photographs? Are tiny cameras some magical bit of gear that will instantly raise your photography? No is the simple answer. But if you want to explore how a tiny camera can help you progress as a photographer, then keep watching. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll have noticed I have a mixture of digital and analog cameras. If we focus on my digital cameras for this video, you'll have seen my workhorse camera, the Lumix G9, and my more aesthetic Fuji Leica-esque camera, the Lumix GX8. But I do have a third Micro Four Thirds camera, the Lumix GX800. I purchased this camera for a very good deal on eBay in the summer of 24, after I told myself I needed a tiny camera in my lineup to fill some sort of niche. Tiny cameras were certainly on the rise in popularity then, but it's hit all kinds of crazy now, with cameras that are over a decade old hitting over £1,000 second-hand. I'm looking at you, Lumix GM5. Before we carry on, this isn't a review of this camera, the Lumix GX800. There are plenty of more qualified people out there to go in-depth on the specs. I'm looking at the purpose of a tiny camera, this camera, and whether or not you need one, or I need one. Now don't get me wrong, this camera is fabulous for what it is, if you accept it has some flaws and isn't quite as capable as my two other fully spec'd cameras, but it can still pull its weight, even against higher megapixel cameras. A good example of this, last year Hannah and I were in Cornwall. She was using the GX800 and I had the GX8. At one point, we essentially took the same photo. Can you guess which is which? Let me know which you think is which in the comments below. I'll reveal all at the end. Okay, so now I've given the GX800 a brief introduction. I wanted to go over some of the pros of having a tiny camera and see if you actually need one in the first place. That way, if you're trying to decide whether one of these small cameras is a potential game changer, you'll have some reasons for and against to help you decide. The biggest pro of this camera from 2017 is quite obviously its portability. In my use case, this camera goes in my work bag most days and joins me on my lunch break in the city. The camera is small enough with the Lumix 12 to 32mm lens to fit in a jacket or cargo trouser pocket comfortably, and it means I always have a capable camera with me if I ever see a photo while I'm out grabbing my lunch. I do also tend to take this camera with me if I'm seeing friends and photography isn't the theme of the day, but I still want the flexibility and performance of a dedicated camera. With that rather obvious plus point out of the way, let's get into the more nitty-gritty reasons a tiny camera may be a good investment. As I said, my day job is in a city, and that means during working hours I don't usually get much photography practice in. I find if I don't have a camera with me, I tend to stop actively looking for compositions, mainly because I get slightly bummed out that I can't get a decent photo of what I'm seeing. So having a small but capable camera that fits in a pocket means I can keep looking for compositions and actually capture them. This means I don't find myself hitting the out of practice slump that a day job can cause, especially during those winter months when the days are shorter here in the UK. If you're watching this, odds on you're like me and you enjoy actually taking photographs. So while getting more practice is always a plus, the act of simply using a camera brings me quite a bit of joy. When it comes to this camera in particular, I like the aesthetic, which is a bonus for me, and it fits nicely into my Micro Four Thirds ecosystem. The fact that I can use all of the lenses I typically have on my main camera is a big plus point for this pocket rocket. I tend to keep this 12 to 32mm telescoping pancake lens on the GX800 because it's so portable, but I've also frequently swapped it out to use my Lumix 25mm f1.7 prime lens, which I did recently upgrade to the Sigma 30mm f1.4. Slightly bigger, but still quite compact. If you have tuned into any of my previous videos, you may have seen a discrepancy in my point about practice. I primarily focus on landscape photography, which surely I can't practice if I work in a city, and you'd be right. So instead, with this camera, I lean into the street photography genre, which also hones my ability to see compositions in a different setting. This helps train your eye in looking for how lines, light, shadows, and the subject can interact with each other. It also exposes me to different environments when shooting, which is good as it pushes me out of my comfort zone and means I can experiment with my style. I can then also transfer these learnings into other genres like landscape photography, and it means I can get more unique shots than if I typically just shot landscape photography by itself. Now, to challenge everything I've just said, I'm sure there are people who would say you can achieve most of those pros with something I and you already carry. In fact, I usually have two of these things with me at all times, that being a phone. As I said, you almost always have it with you, and most modern smartphones have capable multi-lens cameras. Plus, you can edit the photos you take straight away on the same device. So why spend the extra money on what may not even be your primary camera? I can answer that, at least for my use case. Firstly, I love the tactility of cameras. There's nothing quite like the feeling of using a physical camera with its buttons, dials, and rings, especially when comparing that to simply tapping on the glass of a smartphone to take a photo. Secondly, I find for me, having a camera on me gets me in the photography mindset far more than the smartphone in my pocket. Sure, I do take ad hoc images with my phone, but they're usually things like selfies with Han or friends. It's infinitely easier to get distracted while using a smartphone, whether that's social media, checking emails, online shopping, you name it. If the tactility of a camera isn't that big of a deal for you, and you can get in the zone with your phone, then a tiny camera may not be for you. It is an added expense after all. It does require you to charge yet another bit of tech, and you still have to take it with you. And while they are compact, you can't pocket it as easily as a phone. As I said earlier in the video, I tend to carry this camera in either a jacket pocket, cargo trouser pocket, or in a small sling bag. I do occasionally use a lightweight strap with it as well. This camera isn't even my second digital camera. It's my third. So surely I could use either of my other two to fill the gaps the GX800 currently fills. Yeah, that's probably true. My Lumix GX8 isn't enormous. It's got an EVF, it's weather sealed, and has a higher megapixel count, among a few other things. Paired with the 12 to 32mm lens, it does make a fairly compact package, but it's still not nearly as small as the GX800. That also highlights another issue with the photography world: overconsumption. I've become more mindful of my buying habits over the last few years because I, like many, have fallen for the trap of filling a niche with something new in the hopes it'll make you a better photographer. It won't. The only way you and I will get any better at shooting is if we actually go out and do it, instead of getting stuck in an endless cycle of researching new gear, buying that gear, and then getting disheartened when the new thing in question hasn't instantly made you a better photographer. These points against the use case for a tiny camera has led me on numerous occasions to contemplate whether this GX800 is actually superfluous in my collection and if I should just sell it. I usually landed on not selling it, simply because it was such a good deal at the time and the prices have gone up so much. But for a time I did have to intentionally use it, otherwise it collected dust on my shelf. Ultimately, I'm very glad I did decide to keep this camera, as I recently acquired a very exciting photography accessory that has given the GX800 a new lease on life in my collection and has firmly placed it in my lineup as a useful addition.
Your lightsabers will make a fine addition to my collection.
But for that you'll need to tune into my next video. For now though, I treat this camera as my everyday camera, for all the small moments you usually miss by not carrying a camera. Going back to the points I've made in this video though, do you need a tiny camera? I would say yes if you want something you can more comfortably carry with you where you wouldn't normally want to take a large, fully spec'd camera, or if you find yourself not shooting as much as you'd like and having a compact camera could help you get out practicing more in your day-to-day. If you think you can get the benefits of using a tiny camera by using your phone instead, then by all means save your money and put it towards something like a photography trip or a class instead. So what are your thoughts? Do you think this camera is an added luxury or something that has a genuine purpose? Let me know in the comments below. I'm genuinely interested to see where people stand on this one. But for now, see you in the next video.